Okay, yesterday we went over this paper, which I put videos out there for you. Don't forget, you always need to look at the marks on your measuring instrument before you start measuring to see what they are divided up into. You can see these three are divided into different numbers. When you decide the smallest marking on your ruler or your measuring instrument, you'll need to round to that. In the metric system, that's easy because if it's tenths, you round to the first decimal place. Our units aren't that easy. When you're using measurements that somebody else gave you, according to this, you have to kind of assume that they did that right. You always write your answer out to the number of units that your answer goes to. So if you're using a centimeter ruler that has millimeter marks on it, you would measure in centimeters and you would write your answer out to the tenths place. Even if the tenths place is a 0, you'd have to put it on there. And then this side is order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, the order at which you do math, you do parentheses first, exponents second, multiply and divide next, add and subtract last. So today we actually did some practice problems, and I'm going to do those here with you. The paper that you can look at is on Canvas week 2, Thursday. The first formula says LW. That means length times width. Length times width. So there's no dot in or no time sign or anything. So LW without a sign means multiply. LW with a dot means length times width. L parentheses with a W means length times width. LW in parentheses or both in parentheses. All those ways are ways you can write length times width. But what we're going to do is we're going to do some plug and chug, meaning we're going to plug these values that we measured into these formulas. So L means length. So you're going to take your length measurement and you're going to plug that in where L is, 5.0 centimeters. And it's very important you keep the unit on it and you write all the digits that are there. And then W, and I put this dot here for times. If you're sloppy or if you're having trouble telling the decimal points from the dots, then use parentheses. I'm going to replace my W with 10.0 centimeters. When you use your calculator, or hopefully you don't have to use your calculator, to take 5 times 10 is 50. Now we need to figure out our sig figs. These are both measurements, because we know that because they have a unit on them. This one has 1 decimal place. This one has 1 decimal place. The least number of decimal places in my measurements in my problem are 1, so my answer needs 1. So I'm going to need to add a 0.0 on here. Just 50 would be a wrong answer. Your answer needs to show how accurately you measured. And then our units, we took centimeters times centimeters. So our units are going to be centimeters squared. LWH is very similar. You're going to plug 5.0 centimeters in for length. You're going to plug 10.0 centimeters in for width. And up here it says height is 2.0 centimeters. Again, you do the math on your calculator, you get 100. I wanted to point out that this number has 1 decimal place. This number has 1 decimal place. This number, and they're all measurements. So the least number of decimal places in your problem is 1. So your answer needs 1. Then you need to put a unit on it. Well, you took centimeters times centimeters times centimeters. So you get centimeters cubed, or a little 3. Now I'm going to stop right here for just a second. These sometimes confuse kids when they put a square on their unit or a cubed on their unit. They think they need to square the answer, and that is not true. You already got your answer. This is the unit is squared, the unit is cubed. You're done. All right, as we learned yesterday, a fraction means to divide. That is the reason that a divide sign is a line with a dot on top and a dot on bottom. It's a fraction with unknowns. But don't use a divide sign. We'll talk about that in just a second. The formula says to take mass and divide it by volume. And you're going to rewrite this formula just like it says. The formula says a fraction, so you're going to rewrite it as a fraction. On top of the fraction, you're going to put 25.0 grams. On the bottom of the fraction, you're going to put volume, which is 3.0 milliliters. On your handy-dandy calculator, you will put 25 divided by 3, and you get 8.33 repeating. Both these numbers are measurements. We know that because they have a unit on them. So we look at all our measurements, and this one has 1 decimal place, and this one has 1 decimal place. So the least number of decimal places in our problem is 1. So our answer needs 1. So the first decimal place is this 3 right here. So we need to round to that 3. This 3 to the right makes that 3 stay the same. So our final answer is 8.3. Our units, if you write it like a fraction, the units are given to you. So it's grams over milliliters. So I'm going to show you real quick why we write it as a fraction. If you were to write that problem not as a fraction, 25.0 grams divided by 3.0 milliliters, like this, you'd still get the same answer. The problem is you would be wondering what your unit is, or you'd be putting gram milliliters as your unit, or you'd walk up to me and you would say, what's the unit in my problem? And what I would say to you, and again, I'm not trying to be mean, but I would tell you to go back to your seat and write the formula like the formula says to in a fraction, and then come up if you're still having problems. And the beauty of it is you won't come back up because it gives you the answer. So that's why we write, if it says fraction, you write it as a fraction. And we are also, remember, writing out our formulas. You get a point for writing out or rewriting your formula with the numbers and units in it. You get a point for the rounded answer, and you get a point for the unit. So each one of these is worth 3 points. All right, 10 mg, m is 25.0 grams times g. G is gravity, 9.8 meters per second. That actually is the acceleration due to gravity. You do the math on that. 25 times 9.8, and you get 245. This number, these are both measurements. This number has 1 decimal place. This number has 1 decimal place. So our least number of decimal places in the problem is 1, so we have to add 1. We have to have 1 on our answer. It shows how accurately we measured. We measured to the tenths on both our measurements, so our answer should be to the tenths. Our answer should not be more accurate than our measuring was. All right, so we have these 3 units. We have grams, we have meters on top, seconds on bottom. When you have a unit that is not a fraction, you pretend like it's on top of the fraction. So grams on top, meters on top, seconds on bottom. If any of those were alike, they were the same unit. If you had 2 grams or 2 meters or 2 seconds, you might be able to cancel them out. But none of them are alike, so you have to keep them all. Well, it says, the formula says meters or mass comes first, so grams on top, meters on top, over seconds on bottom. We kept them all. And a gram meter per second is a real unit. It means you can move 1 gram object 1 meter in 1 second. I'm going to turn this off and go to a second video.